Hi friends, welcome to the second edition of Tea Time with Mario, my opportunity here to answer reader questions. I'll be tackling first questions on investment in Denmark, then I'll be tackling questions on housing in Denmark, and then I'll be answering questions on high performance / productivity and world travel. The way it works is that people have submitted these questions in the YouTube comments or via email or via social media, and I'll be taking some time here, going off the cuff without any script, to give you my thoughts and perspective on these issues. With that, let's go. First question. Denmark raises its top capital gains rate from 42% to 45%. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are like, sigh. Oof. So, for those of you who don't know, capital gains tax is the tax that you pay on if your investments go, for example, from 1,000 krona to 2,000 krona. You need to pay a tax on that 1,000 krona gain, assuming that you realize it. And there are some exceptions here in Denmark on that. It's kind of complicated, right? But by and large, it's the tax on the gains of your investments. And in Denmark, you already have that topping up at 42% for around 50,000 krona realized in a single year. And that is, I think, pretty sure the highest in the world. And now it's going to be even higher, raising this from 42 to 45%. For reference, like a place like France that is famous for being like egalitarian and high-end tax on the rich and so on, this tax in France is 30%. Here it's 45%. Anyway, my point here is that, that's the price you pay for living in Denmark. Denmark is a very egalitarian society. You see it, for example, with the car taxes. Does Denmark need to tax like 300 or whatever it is percent for if you want to get a Mercedes or a BMW? No, I think it's more of a statement to say here in Denmark we're not liking people that really stand out. We don't like people to be like a lot richer than normal. And at the end of the day, capital gains tax is one of the ways you can combat inequality the best, perhaps. That's why a lot of lobbyists and so on in the US or even in other places in Europe are trying to fight this tax, because basically this is the way the rich people keep making money. This is the way like someone like Warren Buffett pays less in taxes than the average worker in the US because of capital gains. And here they really tax you like very hard on this. So again, price to pay to live in Denmark. I think like if you, for example, have a lot of money, and this wouldn't change the perspective of you already have a lot of money. I don't think like going from 42 to 45 is going to change your life here. But yeah, just kind of reminding you that if you ever want to live from your investments, probably living in Denmark is not the best place. Of course, you should invest in Denmark and you should try to, grow your investment portfolio here while you're here. But the reality is that if you ever want to live from that, you're probably better off living somewhere else. Just one more note on this is that even though, yes, we are raising here the capital gains tax from 42 to 45%, you need to keep in mind that as of, we have a few years ago now this a-Kasse konto, so that one is taxed at 70% for capital gains instead of the usual 20-something or now 45. And you could basically even say that if this a-Kasse konto go instead of being just 100,000 limit to 200,000 limit, and there's a link on that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just check the video over here. Considering we have more money in the a-Kasse account that pays less tax, and now you pay a bit more on tax over here, for most people it will average out. So yeah, that's my take here. Second question, what are your thoughts on crypto beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum? My thoughts are, I'm still bullish on the whole space, and specifically beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum. In the last few months I have invested on two cryptos. I'll tell you which they are at the moment in case you're interested. One is Solana and the other one is Phantom. Solana is one of the newer generation blockchains, even though it has been going on for a while, that promises faster transaction speeds, it promises more transactions per second, it promises lower fees than, for example, something like Ethereum. And Phantom is one of my smart friends calls the best layer 2 crypto solution out there as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, you can research about that. So I have invested in these two. I wish I would have invested sooner. I heard about Solana years ago and I was like, yeah, got too complicated, I don't want to buy it and so on. And now it's it just went balloons. It's still what is now one of the top cryptos, and I'm like, okay, better late than never. And for Phantom, it's still a bit of the early stage. It's money that when you put money into something like this, it's money you're potentially willing to lose completely. So if Phantom goes to zero, and it could just well happen, I'm like, okay, oops. So it's not blue chips, but it's something like, okay, put little bit of money and see what happens. So my thought still for people that want to get into crypto is try Coinbase. Coinbase is a link in the video description, which is basically the easiest setup you can have. Just put recruiting buys and buy a little bit of crypto, whatever you can, like $100, $200, money that you're willing to lose. Do that each month, and then ride the wave in the medium and long term. I'm bullish that, yeah, it's money you could lose, but there's also a bigger potential upside. So it's worth trying. I mean, if I lose all my money, I would be like sad, but at the end of the day, like, I think the potential upside is, it's pretty big, more than, for example, in stocks, if the upside realizes the way it could go. And yeah, do your own research. I mean, this is your money. I'm not a financial investment advisor, So just be careful before putting your money on risk. Third question, and I take a sip of tea. What's your take on pension investments? How much should one put into the pension? Okay, so of course, a lot of caveats here, but for example, in my case, I just put into the pension whatever my company organizes. So in my company, I had something on top of my salary that goes straight to the pension. And then I'm obliged also in my work contract to put part of my actual salary that also goes from my own pocket into the pension. That is, I think, between 10-15% of that. Depends from company to company. That's kind of the setup I have now in Merz, and in Carlsberg before it was the same, and I know friends in other big companies more or less the same as well. You have the option, of course, if you want to put more money than this. I don't, because I see that when I look into these retirement plans, I'm retiring at 67, that's like 30 years away or even more than that for me now. I don't want to wait that long to get my money, so I'd rather spend like money into investments now, even though they have these like humongous capital gains tax rates now and so on. Yeah, pension is too far. But I mean, at least I think like, okay, at least I'm putting this, whatever, 10-15%, whatever it is now, that is slowly growing up, and I think like, do I keep my career, it's gonna look good. Now, a few takes on this. If you don't have pension through your work, I would still, for example, if I wouldn't get pension from my work, but do have a good salary, I would do something like this, like 10% in the pension, even though again, it's money that I would almost never see. It's like, okay, just in case, just put in there. Because I mean, when you invest in the pension, you have lower investments and so on, but it's just nice to just have it just in case straight on the side. And of course, this applies for someone who's like, my advice applies for someone who's in your 20s, or you are in a case in early 30s, then you're like, okay, like retirement is really far away. For example, if I would be 55 or like even early 50s, you would be thinking, okay, maybe I should start putting a bit more money into the pension than I'm doing now. But for most people, most expats, you probably just, keep what your company is doing. And if your company doesn't put anything, just put a little bit yourself. Next question, how do you get that child credit from the government? So this is when it's quick. So when you get a child, the mother of the child will get automatically this child credit paid out every quarter. So that's like what happened to us. We didn't need to sign up anywhere, just by registering the birth of the child in Denmark. That was pretty much it. Of course, if your child was born abroad and you're just moving to Denmark, maybe you need to do some bureaucracy, which I don't know. But otherwise, it's just like, again, paid to the mother every quarter. Now, I just noted here as well, there are a few things that might change on this next year. I read that through next year, instead of having the mother receive all the paycheck, it will be divided between the two parents, but same amount in total. So for example, in this case, instead of being all to my wife, it would be like half to me, half to her. And then there's going to be a limit, if there's not a limit now, actually, that if you're earning more than, it says here, 818,300 Danish krona, the benefit that you get, so if that's what you're earning as a person, so not as a family, but like as an individual person, the more you earn on top of that, the lower you will get in terms of this child benefit. So again, if you're earning too much, maybe they don't want to give you the money. So next question. What are your opinions on investment platforms beyond Nordnet? So for example, let's say Saxo, eToro, and so on. My thoughts on this, I tried Saxo. I don't like the user interface. So Saxo and Nordnet are basically the two main options here in Denmark. Saxo's interface, I personally don't like it at all, especially on mobile. It just looks ancient and user-friendly. Yeah, not my cup of tea. But again, I don't really actively invest, so I don't do a lot of day trades. I just have my money partying in Nordnet. There's a link over there as well, and just set it and forget it. If you do a lot of trading back and forth, Saxo has lower fees than Nordnet. It has like 17 krona, I think, stuff like that for each stock that you buy. Nordnet is like 30 something. So that could add up. So for example, if I would do a lot more trading, I would go with something like Saxo instead. And then someone asked as well about eToro. I know eToro as well. I think I registered a few years ago. eToro gives you the opportunity to do like a social part of it. So if you see someone that is performing really well, you can follow their portfolio and then basically automatically see whatever someone is doing. I think that idea is cool. You can also do cryptos in eToro. I just prefer to have a Nordic-based broker, especially if I have a lot of money. So if like Northern or Saxo, at least you're closer to home here. If eToro, I think it's Israeli, like I don't know how is it with European law and so on. So just my thoughts of like, okay, at the end of the day, what I'm doing is pretty simple. I'm not doing anything so complicated. So I'll just keep the setup here in the easiest and most. Something happens, I can just go and shout in the office in Northern here. Probably eToro just wouldn't work. Okay, next one, someone asks, what do you think about the income protection a-Kasses provide? So you can increase your benefits. So for example, when I made a video about explaining a-Kasse is this Danish unemployment benefits, where you can get like, I think in hand would be like between 10 to 13,000 a month in case you get unemployed. But there are some other services like this a-Kasse offer like a top up that you can get up to 90% of your salary. I think there's a limit here of up to 40,000 per month. I think that I never signed up to anything like that. I know some people that did, but my take on this is that unless you have really high fixed cost, and that's a no-go for most people, unless you have a really high fixed cost, and if you get fired, basically your world collapses, don't bother with something like that, because the fees, as far as I understand, for this are pretty high. And unlike a-Kasse, which I think is a good deal, because at the end of the day, the government comes in and foots a lot of the bill, the government will not foot any of the bill for people that are making like this amount of money. So yeah, just be aware of that. Unless you're really afraid of getting fired, and the only reason you should be a bit afraid of getting fired is because you have a very high fixed cost, and if you can't pay this fixed cost, things go really nasty, and you don't have a saving and so on to give you a buffer of a year or whatever you search for a job, don't bother with something like this. Not a good deal. I don't do it. Next question is someone asking, have you earned any money from YouTube yourself yet? And I explained that in another different video. Not directly. In order to, for example, for myself, to monetize my channel and make money from the ads that you likely see in the channel, I need to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. At the moment, I'm recording this video, I'm like around 800 or something subscribers. And I have like 2,000 or so watch hours. So I'm still a long way to go, I think, to get money directly from YouTube, but we'll get there. And the way you can support me to do this and then make sure that I can do more videos like this and deliver most value to you is, again, click sure to subscribe below, because if I don't have 1,000 subscribers, I will never be able to do things like this. Just one more thing on the YouTube stuff is that when I reach 1,000 subscribers, I can also open the community tab and then send messages directly to all the subscribers. They would see it in the feed. And I think one of the ways I want to use this is that I want to do some kind of live event, something that would be like a meet and greet where we just go to a cafe and or a bar or whatever, and just get a lot of people that want to talk about investment in Denmark or expat or tricks or whatever you can do to make the best of your life in here, to just meet and mingle and just hang out. No, without any fees, without any speaking and so on, just like hey, let's go and meet up, and we probably have a lot of the same interests, let's get together. And for that, yeah, it would be great that this functionality comes out, because then I can reach out to the audience a little bit easier. And as well, if you're interested in something like that and you feel, oh, that would be a good idea, do reach out to me, because I would like, of course, if I do something like that, to have people helping me out, organize and invite people or whatever, find a place and so on. Now moving to real estate related questions, and the first one is actually investment and real estate related, and it says, should you invest while you save for down payment? And my take is yes, because if you're looking for an apartment and you want to put a down payment, you likely need to talk about 300,000, 400,000, 800,000, even $1 million Danish krona. I mean, if you want to have the 20% to put down for a place, yeah, maybe it's a bit less if you need to put only 5%, but still, we're talking about a decent amount of money. And I think for most cases, if you put that money in the bank account in Denmark, I think, what is it? I think it's around 100,000 the limit you can have before you start actually paying to the bank in most banks to have money in the bank. So really not worth it. I understand some people are a bit like, hey, what if the investments crash and so on? Well, my take is that put the money in investments, and the closer you are to fulfilling your money for the down payment on your very close, let's say if you are 2 years away from making a down payment, then invest as much as you can. But if you're 2 months away, 3 months away, you can start slowly cashing in, maybe not all in one shot, because you don't want to, in the same way you want to buy in with dollar cost averaging, you maybe want to do the same when you sell, especially when you're talking about big money, unless you're making a big gain. But yeah, I think it's a wasted opportunity otherwise. this year investments have been doing good, last year as well, the year before as well. Nobody knows if next year is also going to be good. And yeah, it could be that you're really screwed and you can be selling in the worst moment possible. But yeah, by and large, my take is that put your money to work. It's not really worth to have a lot of money sitting down doing nothing. But again, your risk toleration may vary. I would be okay with like, okay, if the market crashes a little bit, I might just wait a year more to buy a house or something, fully knowing that it was a risk I could take. Next question is, would you buy a house in Denmark if you're living abroad? Assuming you're, for example, you're a Dane. And there are actually quite a few Danes watching the channel, so hello, Danish friends. And yeah, my take is that why would you bother, honestly? There are a lot of things going on in the Danish real estate market, which is good, but I don't know how much banks would be willing to loan to you if you're not living here. So assuming you want to make a mortgage, if you want to sell a house, you're not. So for example, you want to speculate and buy low and sell higher, and you need to pay like around 50% on the sale, assuming that you're living abroad and you're not actually living in the flat. That will happen also if you want to own a second home. Buying to rent here, unless you buy a new apartment, is also tricky and there are complications. So the big leverage, for example, here would be like, okay, you can get a big mortgage, and then if the value of your house goes up because you have been leveraged, because you have had a big mortgage and a big debt, your, let's say, equity goes higher. But assuming you can't do that and you want to buy cash, because that's likely the most likely case as a foreigner, you're better off putting the money in the stock market than having the money more liquid and so on. If you want to buy something here and then rent it out for a few years before you buy in, and you think like, okay, maybe now is a good time because in a few years it's going to be a lot more expensive, okay, then maybe. But yeah, it's not the brightest idea, I would say, but maybe I'm wrong. Now, high performance question, and this is a very important for high performance questions. Where can you find a babysitter in Denmark? So I put this in high performance in the sense that if you have a kid or kids, all of a sudden you need to do everything possible to unlock more of your time. If you want, for example, you want to do full-time job and a YouTuber and write books and so on, as I do. So I need to find good opportunities, and Babysitter is one of them. So the way we found ours is first, and why we went to most people, just asking your daycare. There are a lot of, like for example, in our kids' daycare, there are a lot of young girls working there. They're working as an intern or part-time, and they even asked, hey, can we babysit your son, in some cases. And sometimes you would ask, hey, I like you, can you actually babysit once a week or something like that? And most times you can find a good connection that your child already knows, and I think that's probably the best. Second, for example, if you have strange languages in your family, as we do, or you have like multiple languages and you want someone to speak to your child in the same language, you can check on Facebook. That's what we did, and we found, for example, someone that speaks the same language as my wife, which is very niche language, Estonian, right? So it's like, okay, that was important for us, and then we found a babysitter like that on Facebook. But again, do your own research. It's something that is actually quite important, and we actually interviewed quite a few people in the past as well. It's not something that you just do lightly, but yeah, do the work. It's definitely going to be worth it. Next up is that people ask me what is my most interesting high performance / productivity discovery of the last few months. And I think I teased this on some of my other videos. There's something called Whisper Sync for audio, which means that, for example, I am opening now on the fly on my Kindle on my phone. I have a book over here. If you're curious, I'm reading The Life of the Artist again. And it basically have the thing being talked while at the same time, so you have the audiobook, but at the same time you have the text of the book. So for example, I could be like cooking something and hearing an audiobook, and if I find something interesting, I would just be highlighting and then links to my database of book highlights. And I love that because I always felt like, okay, I had heard a lot of audiobooks before, and I like audiobooks. I think there's a lot of learning you can do or something like this. But if I want to, if I heard a good idea and I want to scribble down something, I just basically like had to open my computer or tap on my phone, and it's a bit inconvenient. But here you can basically just highlight what you hear, and then when you finish the book, you can just review all your highlights in the comfort of your bed or whatever. Just make all these connections and so on. I think this is super cool. I started like consuming a lot of books like this. Spend a lot of money on Amazon now, but the way it works up is that you need to buy the Kindle version of the book, and then when you buy the Kindle versions of the books in Amazon directly, you have like a checkbox that says like buy Audible. It's like a checkbox that says like include the Audible version as well. And the cool thing about this as well is that It's actually cheaper to buy the books on Audible like this than to buy the Audible subscription. The Audible subscription is like around $15, and this, like, the books are normally like $8 to $9 when you do this like double combo. So you buy the Kindle version and the audiobook version, and super cool stuff. I mean, I'm incredibly excited. I went through quite a few books like this, and books that I would have never had any highlights. Now I have a lot of them, and I'm gonna be making a video in the future perhaps on how I use this highlight system, because I'm like super stoked about this. As you can see, super cool stuff. All right, 2 last questions on travel, because some of you love my travel stories from those days. For those of you who don't know, I have been to 133 countries, and that has been a number I have been stuck with for the last year and a half, so that's gonna change now. Specifically, so what are new countries I have in plan to visit? So top of the list of potential easy options are, from all places, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is finally open for tourists, so, and also for, you know, if you're corona vaccinated, you can also go. Pakistan, potentially. I'm a bit wary of going to Pakistan, but maybe as well. And then I want to experiment potentially with a travel agency called Lupine Travel that goes to kind of random places. Then I'm a bit wary of going on my own, so for example Algeria and so on. So maybe go with them to one of those places. I just need to align with my family because I don't want to leave them too long far away. Last question, what about cruising in 2021 and 2022? So those of you who know me know I love cruising, and cruising is, I think, a great way to see a lot of places around the world, but at the same time having the comforts of an all-inclusive hotel while you're there. And even with kids, as I have done with my little son when we went to New Zealand and the Caribbean, it's a super good way to travel. And now, of course, there was a bit of like a reputational hit on cruises because of Corona, you know, like who doesn't want to be in a like tricky situation on that. But now that it has opened up, just a few thoughts on this. So first, you need to be vaccinated to go to the cruise. That's not a problem for me or for my wife, but you have a child, for example, we have a 2-year-old son, he needs to be vaccinated as well, in case who want to have no restrictions whatsoever. But of course, there are no vaccines allowed or like approved for children so young. So basically, like traveling with a kid that is unvaccinated on a cruise can be a bit of a hassle. He would need to wear a mask, he can go off the ship unless it's on an official shore excursion, except in some places. Looks a bit complicated in most places, at least in the Caribbean. But now, like just a few days ago, I discovered that MSC Cruises is doing like cruises out of Saudi Arabia of all places. So from Jeddah and then going to Egypt and going to some beaches. We might do that. I'm quite stoked about the opportunity. I don't know if my wife is keen on going to Saudi Arabia, but we'll discuss that. But it seems to be like there's some niches like this that are open up where cruises might be probably one of the best options to go. But we'll see. With that, I'm hoping that as things normalize in the world, cruises go back to normal as well, because again, it's like an incredible deal most of the times. Like these Saudi Arabia things I was looking, it was like 7,000 krona, or it was like I think 14,000 krona for a whole family for 8 days, including the kid. And that's 8 days with all-inclusive hotel and like, because a cruise is an all-inclusive hotel, you go to visit a lot of different areas and so on. Not a bad deal at all, so let's see. Okay, if you have any questions yourself that you want to see included in the next version of the Tea Time, the best bet is to send me an email, and the way you do that is by signing up to the Compass, which is my newsletter. There's a link down in the video description. But when you sign up to the Compass, we can build this like one-on-one direct connection via email, which is, at least for me, the best way to reply and the best way to keep in touch. Now, if you want to hear more about investment in Denmark and I want to hear more about housing related questions, or even some more of my takes on high performance and travel, I made like in July, my last Tea Time, and I think a lot of the questions are still relevant, and most of the information there is still the same, so it's still valid. So make sure you check it out over here, and I leave you to that, and thank you and see you next week.